Welcome to Planet Marzipan Podcast,
your fish and Marillion podcast,
where we talk about all things in the planet of Marillion and fish. I'm Mezza, and here's my mate,
Craig Houston.
Hello, welcome to Planet Marzipan. I am Mezza, I'm here with my good friend...
Craig.
Craig.
Craig
is back. We are here for more talk about Happiness is the Road. So we're welcoming back some of the folks who were with us before. We welcome back Felicity Pryke.
Good evening.
Hello. And welcome back Nathan Page.
Good evening.
Hi, Nath. And we welcome back James Levey.
Evening.
And in place of Andrew Barnsley-Wood, not that anybody can replace Andrew Barnsley-Wood, but he's going to have a try, we welcome Grae Tennick.
Good evening. I'm not sure I'd want to step into those shoes, you know.
They are big shoes.
They are, yeah.
Usually Crocs, I think you'll find. But yeah, they're big shoes, yeah. But welcome, Grae. So we are here to round off our discussion about Happiness is the Road. On the previous two episodes, we've talked about the two albums. So today we're here to talk about everything else, which is the formats and the artwork and the tour and the live albums. So shall we start with the formats? Craig, have you got your campaign edition handy?
Ta-da!
He's waving.
Do indeed.
Do you want to sort of describe what that is?
It is a thing of beauty, as the rest of the deluxe versions have been. It is a box which is about 5 inches or so, just over 5 inches across, containing two small hardback books with volume 1 and volume 2, with an absolutely stunning set of imagery from Antonio Sigias. Is that how you pronounce his surname? And I think it goes along the scale from when Anorak came out, and that was a nice book to begin with. Then they went to Marbles, which was a absolutely stunning piece. We didn't get anything for Somewhere Else because they went straight to retail with it. Learned by the mistakes and came back with this, and I think this is by far one of the prettiest of the sets.
Yeah, I mean, the two books are spot varnished on the front as well, aren't they?
Yep, yes they are. And I mean, the photography and the artwork and stuff is just absolutely brilliant. The only thing is on your hard shoulder, you do have reams and reams and reams of pages of all of our names who were in there.
Well, there you go.
But I think as a campaign edition, it is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Has everybody on the call got one of those?
Yes.
I don't have it anymore. I lost it in the divorce.
Oh, sorry.
I've seen it. It's interesting. I think in the Corona Diaries, literally this week, H was talking about how Antonio Sayas submitted loads of different artwork.
Yeah.
So I think they picked out fairly quickly what the cover was going to be, but all the fact that there's so much other imagery in there was all stuff that he'd done anyway. So it's kind of like all the other versions of the front cover.
I don't know whether you missed that. You were speaking when he did it, but Craig's got two of them. If you speak to him nicely, you might be able to come to a deal. But yeah, it was the campaign edition. So that arrived, I haven't got the right screen up, but that arrived slightly before the release date, didn't it?
Did it actually turn up on time, this one?
Well, in fact, there is a video. He's not here, but Andrew Barnsley-Wood recorded a video of his copy coming through the door and him opening it. There is an unboxing video online.
That was before unboxing videos were
ahead of the trend.
Well, it's very ahead of the trend, but he's doing it with one hand because he's holding the camera with one hand. He's trying to do everything else. He actually drops one of the books on the floor. It's quite funny, but yeah. But he's very excited to see it. But yeah, that arrived slightly before the...
Yeah, because this one made it on time, didn't it? It was the next one that didn't. Yeah.
But they've released two individual jewel case versions as well at the same time.
Yes.
for release. So this one didn't go to retail straight away.
No, so the individual discs are Racket Intact CD12 and Intact CD13.
And yours are still sealed there, John.
No, one is, one isn't. Weirdly, I've opened Essence, but I've not opened the hard shoulder. I don't know what that is, why that is. It's something to do with this, I think.
The EMI released version that came out. It was it February the 2009?
Yeah.
A few months after.
It's both albums in a proper jewel case with a slightly different sleeve. It's just got text on the front that says "Happiness is the road," but the track list is exactly the same. But it's just nice to have them in one box. It doesn't mention EMI anywhere on this at all, but I think they distributed it. But Craig and I had a conversation the other day about it. But it's still on the Intact imprint. Worth mentioning that there were promo copies of the single "Whatever Is Wrong with You" as well. Intact promo 13.
I've got a copy of that somewhere.
I've got a version somewhere.
I've got one here. Got one here. Yeah. It's just a one-track promo, 3 minutes 17 edit. But it was released in another format. It's very early to have my favourite slot in the episode, isn't it? But
well, at least didn't have the movie first before you dive into your favourite stuff.
Well, you know, when you've got to go for it, you've got to go for it. But
put the spoilers in early.
Yeah. Racket released this on vinyl, on 45 RPM vinyl, limited to 2,000 copies of each. I have to be honest and say I didn't buy this when it came out. I wasn't buying vinyls at that point.
It wasn't in your vinyl phase, was it?
No, these were gifted to me by a really good friend. But it sounds absolutely amazing on here. The dynamic range on these is phenomenal. When it's quiet, it's so quiet. And when it's loud, Wake Up sounds absolutely brilliant. It bursts out the speakers. But if you can pick these up, I do highly recommend them. But there's only 2,000 numbered copies of each. It was since reissued at least on Madfish, on 2 double albums. I don't think these were limited at the time. But I think, Felicity, were you saying that only hard shoulders available on Racket at the moment?
Only, I'm going to double check now. Only
it was Essence, wasn't it?
Only Essence. I think.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Yeah. Or maybe. Hold on. Do I tell a lie? Yeah, oh no, it is hard shoulder. 2 disc vinyl of the hard shoulder.
Right. Okay.
You need to stop talking about records, John. You're costing me a fortune this month.
Well, there you go. You know what? I apologise to anybody who wants to buy these things, but it's worth it. It's really worth it in this case.
So these versions, are they on 33 or are they still on 43?
The 33. But again, they're not as dynamic as the 45 RPM, but they do sound pretty damn amazing, I have to say. Some of these Madfish versions, the pressings were really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, thick card sleeves, picture inner sleeves, lyrics, great. Really highly recommended. Should we talk about the front covers or the sleeve of the album?
The Asylum satellite sleeves are really nice.
It's a fantastic image. It really is.
And it's odd because there was never a album cover T-shirt done for these. As was, there was a red T-shirt with a yellowy kind of Asylum satellite on, but there was never any pure album cover T-shirts.
Yeah, because it was the song, wasn't it? Because they had Invisible Man, they had Asylum satellite, and there was another one because they had the green one and the red one. And
This Train Is My Life was one because I had that.
Yeah.
Asylum satellite, which had, I think we can see the madness perfectly from here, round the outside of the satellite. There was a blue one, which was that the Man from the Planet Marzipan?
It might have been, yeah. And then there was a green one.
There was a green one,
which was the Fabulously Odd one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I bought that, and apparently it didn't really sell very well at all until Pete wore it one night on stage, and after that, it sold like hotcakes.
Or because people saw you in yours, Graham.
Not because Pete was on stage wearing it. Yeah.
I'm not too fond of the front image, if I'm honest. I can understand why there's not a T-shirt with it on. It's not that striking in my book. Sorry to be the
Oh, I like it.
negative one. There's better images in the booklets than this, I think. Much stronger images. And then the EMI or the racket, the intact double one is a slightly different image again. It's kind of
Combines the two, doesn't it? But
yeah, a little bit. It's got like a red image with a purple sort of hue on the outskirts. But yeah, I mean, there's some great images in the books, but I don't think the front image is fantastic.
so if you haven't got the campaign edition, you're definitely missing out. So there'll be versions around on eBay, I would imagine. And fingers crossed, one of these days there might be a remix.
We all look at James Levey at this point, who doesn't say anything.
At some point. At some point.
Go on, because the actual album does not need remixing.
So I
It
was
just
about to
needs
say that.
Oh, it does.
That's a reissue.
In
but-
5.1 or 7 or Atmos.
Or Atmos. So I think the idea of remixing was really valid for the earlier albums because the technology's changed so much. But when we start talking about these albums, they may have benefit from a remaster or from taking the tapes and doing a sort of a surround mix of some description. But remixing the albums, very few of them need it.
Craig, can you cut that bit out? Because I don't want Lucy to hear that, please. There really won't be any remixes if she hears that.
It'll be, I don't know when it will be, but it's I'm guessing it will be, yes. It will be
Be
happening.
a few years away at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we talk about the tour?
Oh, just before,
Oh, yeah.
there's also the making of.
Sorry, James. How dare I? Of course there is. Do your pitch.
There is satellite navigation, which I really like the cover of because it's
It's better than that. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really nice. Mark's done a really good job on that one.
Give me that.
Um,
You got it handy?
no, I haven't actually. It's buried somewhere.
All right.
Um,
Apologies. I'm going up.
but yes, there's a 3 CD satellite navigation making of, which has got sorry out of stock. But yeah, I think you can download it.
Yeah, Bandcamp wise, yeah.
On Bandcamp. Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff on it. I think we talked about on the previous pods about the Marbles version of This Train Is My Life or The Train. That's really interesting. There's some different bits and pieces worth getting. There you go. That's the one.
A much better cover.
I always thought that would make a really good T-shirt.
Yeah, it would. That's a remix, James. Put that forward, will you?
And there's also, I was going to mention this as well, Putting on the Ritz,
Putting on the Ritz, yeah.
Yeah.
On the Ritz.
Yeah.
which has got Little Saint Nick, which you mentioned, Nick, which is a brilliant cover. And there's also some unheard of jams and stuff on there, which Mike put on. So that's always worked there, and that's a nice little cover as well.
You can download that, although it was one of the web CDs, wasn't it? But you can download it now from the site.
Yes, it was Christmas 2008.
H forgot about Little Saint Nick when they were going through the collection of gifts Christmas compilation on TCD. He thought it was a cover of the Beach Boys, Little Saint Nick. He didn't even remember that it was.
Slept since then, honey, you know.
Yeah.
Just talk amongst yourselves like I'm putting things back in the rack.
Yeah,
Just start
doing
the
some
tour.
tidying up.
Yeah, the tour starting on the 8th of November 2008 at the Iron.
So
Ironworks.
before we get to this talk, can I explain something? I know I wasn't on the first two
Oh, yeah.
episodes, but for me, this
They
is a really
stole
this is
something
really-
off you, didn't they?
well, not even that. It's a really important. Oh yeah, they did steal something off me, but that's kind of why it's a really important album for me. So because of my job, because I was in the military, I spent a lot of time away. So I hadn't seen Marillion live for 10 years at this point, because every time they toured, I was either in the desert or somewhere in Europe playing soldiers. And I just hadn't managed to see them for 10 years. I also hadn't lived anywhere for longer than 3 years since I was 3 years old. And York was the longest I'd ever lived anywhere. And I moved there in 2004. And by 2008, I'd actually managed to get back into music and formed a band with a certain guy called Pete Harwood.
Yes.
Who obviously at that, and it was about this point, it was after we'd formed our band, he got offered the job, and he got offered the job through a friend of his who had been the guitar tech and went away. So I ended up kind of falling back into the line of paying attention to the band because I knew what was going on. So this, for me, I mean, obviously everything up to 97, 96, 97, I'd been religious. I'd gone to the gigs, I'd seen, bought all the albums on the day of release, what have you. And then I had a 10-year gap. I'd bought somewhere else as soon as it was released, but I'd never done any of the pre-sales before or anything like that because my life was just taken up with other stuff. And then so it was the first pre-order that I'd done, and I returned to go to see the band live. And Leeds was the first date that I went to, but we'll come to that no doubt if we go through it.
Yeah.
But it was just stunning. And then it was about 6 months later or so that you and I met, and that was.
Apologies for that, Gray.
Yeah, and then it went on. Yeah, so
it's all downhill from there, isn't it?
But it blew me away, and it was weird because at the time I was like, God, I should have fought harder to be around for at least some of the gigs over the last 10 years because it reminded me just how important they were to me musically.
Did you get a chance to chat with Pete about how he felt about the job before and or after?
So he offered. He said we'd been talking about. So bearing in mind that Pete knew all the guys in Mostly Autumn and Heather and what have you. So there was the Fish Link and there was all that kind of stuff. And so we talked about bands that we liked and what have you. And he knew that I was a fan of Marillion to kind of an obsessive level, to the point that he actually never referred to them as Marillion when he worked for them. He went, "Oh, by the way, I'm off with that band again," just so that I wouldn't get pissed off that he was away. But yeah, so he really enjoyed. So he hadn't spent much time focusing on the band. It wasn't a kind of he was a fan of the band and then started working for them. It was a friend of his who worked with them who was moving on.
Who was it?
The guitar tech.
Yeah, who was his friend?
Jason.
Yeah, it was. I think, yeah. And all the contact was done.
Jason Burney. Was that?
I don't know his surname.
I can't remember his surname.
Gone to work with Porcupine Tree and Stephen Wilson.
Possibly.
Okay. We'll have to check that, folks.
No. So I think the guitar tech went on to work with Iron Maiden.
That was Colin.
Pride.
Yeah, it was
Colin.
Yeah, it was Colin.
Right.
Okay.
So, but he loved his time with the band. When he took the job, and he was just like, I think that he was just so pleased and relaxed that the band was so relaxed and approachable, and everything was manageable, and there was no stress. And I remember when he was getting,
there was no stress. We'll come back to that shortly.
For him. Because he would get, so he said with Lucy as the manager and Ian organising the business side of things, he always knew it was going. He had a calendar way out. He got the books from Lucy with all the tour diaries and what was going on, and he loved it. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. And I might have benefited a little bit out of it, sort of. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was a really important time, and yeah.
How long was he with them?
So he went from 2008 up until, was it 4 years ago? 4 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
because he was there for the Poland weekend 17-19. He was there in 21, I think it was. Yeah, because he was still working with them when we had the couch convention and what have you.
Right. Yeah,
I think that was when around about the time that he stopped.
Yeah. And he only stopped to come and work back in York in a regular position.
Yeah, he'd had enough of all the travelling and all the getting away, and he's now got a fixed role in York Barbican. He did sound engineering for York Barbican.
Yeah, seen him a few times at gigs.
Yeah.
Lovely guys, Pete. Okay, well, thanks for explaining that.
Yes.
I'll the third chance of trying. Let's talk about the tour. It started on the 8th of November at the Ironworks in Inverness.
Yeah.
Did you go to that,
was
Fred?
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was there.
Okay, well, between you can tell us the story about the Ironworks, because it was a memorable gig, I understand.
I don't remember it being that bad, but apparently
I don't remember it being that
That's
bad.
been
But people reckon it's one of the worst ever gigs that they've seen.
I might have heard earlier today. Had a quick listen. They're very under rehearsed.
Yeah, I think maybe that was in context. We all knew it was a warm-up show, really.
Yeah,
I think it was not necessarily advertised as warm-up show, but I think there was a sense that it wasn't going to be fully rehearsed and it wasn't going to be perfect.
Perfect storm, though, isn't it? Not fully rehearsed, brand new group of tech guys. Yeah, what? Yeah,
A lot of new songs.
yeah.
They did a lot of the. It's interesting looking at the set list, and it's amazing how much of that album they did on that tour.
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's a lot. I know. If I remember right where we were standing, we were off to the side because there's me and Mark Kennedy, and we were there with. On that tour, I helped out a lot with Jim on merch. So that was. So I wasn't front and center at these gigs as much as I would have been on other tours since I was doing merch on a lot of the gigs. But
Don't you make out it was a hardship? You loved being on merch.
oh, it was hilarious. Me and Jim had such a good time.
In fact, if you can arrange to do it again and promote this podcast, that would be a great idea, Craig.
I do miss Jim. He's gone up to Scandinavia now, hasn't he?
Has he? Wow.
Yeah, he's living up
quite a
there.
few years ago he's been there.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, because it was not long after their album, Big Red. Was it Big Red Spark?
Yeah.
It was not long after that was released. He moved over and went to Scandinavia and does his work from there.
Yeah. So that's the first gig was the Ironworks. Second gig was at the ABC in Glasgow.
We did that as well.
There
We
as well,
drove,
yeah.
And
we drove
it-
down.
what I had to actually message Rich Harding to confirm my own memories of that day, because earlier in that day there was a Forgotten Sons gig at Rockers
Yeah.
with Rich Harding singing.
Wow.
I think that Martin had left Forgotten Sons at that point, and they just decided to do a gig with Rich singing it. So that was earlier in the day, and then we all went to the ABC.
Rich Harding of Glass Satellites now.
Yes.
The latest of his brilliant tribute band at time of recording.
But there was it was a much better gig at the ABC.
Yeah.
It was night and day. But I mean, I used to really like that venue in Glasgow. It was really nice.
It was the ABC that burnt down, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was it the ABC that? Yeah. It's a shame about that. It was a good venue.
Yeah, it was.
And then the following night was Newcastle University, which I was at. Craig was at as well.
Yeah, I came home, dumped my stuff in the house, and then had to go straight back into Newcastle because Jim needed a hand setting up. And that, so it was a quick turnaround.
Distinctly remember Mr. H having a hissy fit on stage that night and shouting at the crew mid set. The atmosphere was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, that was the second time that they played the Basement, because they played it on the Somewhere Else tour, and it both times had said to Lucy, this is the wrong venue for them. Really, just it's more of a down and dirty. So it's a student union. Yeah, it's more of a, you have like a different type of bands and stuff and that in there, really.
It was well attended. It was
but it was only, I think they said there was less than 600 people there. It was only didn't have that big a capacity.
Yeah.
But considering that they could have played, any of the other venues and sold twice as many tickets, it was just, I think the venue did not help them picking that one.
No.
It was around that time I was quite active on the Mole from memory. So was Newcastle the gig where they didn't encore? They just kind of went off and.
I've just flicked over the page.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah, because they ended with Neverland. They didn't come back on.
Yeah.
After that, yeah. And it was a bit of a,
the Setlist FM reads as though they did do an encore and it was Whatever Is Wrong With You in Neverland.
Yeah, but they didn't come on and do Happiness Is the Road.
They didn't do that. No, that'll have been the second encore, presumably. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of moving around the set lists on this tour. It wasn't anywhere near as fixed as they have done on previous tours. There was a lot of testing out different orders.
Yeah, particularly at the end, because it went between Whatever Is Wrong With You and Between You and Me as one of the final songs, and then Between You and Me moved into the and 3 Minute Boy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they moved 3 or 4 of the songs around towards the end of the set.
I'll just read out the Glasgow set list. So that was Nothing Fills a Hole, Woke Up, Essence, Beautiful, Dreamy Street, This Train Is My Life, Man from Planet Marzipan, Wave, Mad, Opium Den, Great Escape, Afraid of Sunlight, Thunderfly got an outing on the first 3 gigs, but then disappeared. Waiting to Happen, Asylum Satellite 1, and Invisible Man as the last song on the main set. Encore 1, Whatever Is Wrong With You and Neverland, and Encore 2, Between You and Me and Happiness Is the Road.
But the Thunderfly came back for Leeds.
Yeah.
And also 3 Minute Boy was in the second encore in Leeds as well. Because he kind of he had a bit of fun with it at the start. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I know in Bristol there was the other half thrown in as well.
Yeah.
They seem to add songs
And
as they sort of drop in and drop out, not as much as the Somewhere Else tour, which is what we said on the previous pod. Nathan was right. It was like when we talk about the Nottingham show and things like that, Somewhere Else tour, they were throwing things left, right, and centre, and you could shout out and they would probably play it. But this one, they sort of seem to have almost a twin set and rotate certain numbers. But I think they were rehearsing some of them up for the convention in the beginning of 2009, because it was the first time they did a convention without any warm-ups.
Right.
And also the start of the gig moves. So obviously in Glasgow and Inverness they opened with Nothing Fills the Hole and Woke Up, and by we got to the kind of the second half of the UK tour, they'd moved to Dreamy Street and This Train Is My Life as kind of a fixed starting point.
Yeah,
I mean,
I could have sworn that they'd changed to Dreamy Street by the time I got to Leeds. So
no,
it was still Nothing Fills the Hole.
Manchester was the first night they swapped it.
Leeds was the night after Newcastle, and the difference between the 2 gigs was just night and day.
It wasn't.
it was Colston Hall in
Bristol. Yeah,
sorry, yeah, but the story between the Newcastle and the Leeds gigs was just
I think
the story about Bristol was they had I think it was it might be keyboard or guitar issue, and they started jamming around "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks, and then H only knew about. I was listening to it earlier. H only knew the first couple of verses or the first couple of chords because his guitar was working, and then he dumped that and went into 3 Minute Boy because he knew 3 Minute Boy and jammed it around, and the crowd went mad, and they had a really good version of it, which Wyatt then got added to the set as an encore.
From reports that I remember at the time, a lot of people said that Bristol was the turning point of the tour.
Yeah,
it seemed to be when it started to take off, and then I think we all can say that Leeds was.
It was phenomenal.
Amazing.
It was amazing.
It was hot and sweaty and packed, and
but it was the band's response as well. You know, I listened to the Leeds show today, and the band's response by the end of the second song, Pete and H are both going, "Wow, thank you. We needed this."
Yeah.
By the end of the set, they're still doing it, and I don't know if anybody's listened to it recently, but because the recordings are sound desk recordings, the mics are still on, and as they walk off, you can hear Pete going, "That was fucking great." You know, as he's walking off, so the gig's over completely, and he's just like that. So and I think that for them, that was the turning point as well.
Well, Pete doesn't do that very often. He's quite critical, is Pete.
Yeah,
and so that's great. Yeah, Leeds was a great night. Absolutely.
Up until 2 years ago, it was my favourite Marillion gig of all time.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the only Marillion gig my wife's been to.
Well, if you leave it there, that's quite a good point.
Exactly, yeah.
From there, they went to Manchester on the 14th at the Academy again.
Yeah, I was at that one. That was a good one.
I don't remember it, but I was there.
I think we met you in the pub beforehand, but that's a whole other thing, yes.
I remember doing merch at this one. This was before they changed the Academy, and the merch was actually in the hall at the back,
Yeah.
rather than outside in the bar kind of thing. And I know at times previously it had it to the side, but this was at the very, very back. I remember, because I was watching the gig from the merch at the very back was strange.
Yeah. From there, Bournemouth,
Didn't do that.
Dudley, JB's at
Didn't do
Dudley.
Oh yeah, that was a hot and sweaty one. That was.
Yeah.
We got Quartz and When I Meet God, which is the only time they played it on the whole tour.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, right in the middle of the set as well.
Yeah,
Great.
it was a real surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've referred to this in the previous episode with Mr. Wood. Unfortunately, he's not here to gush about it again, but Rock City on the 18th of November. Aside from what you said in the previous episode, James, can you remember anything else about it?
I think, yeah, it was just really, Nathan probably remembers better than I do, but it was just a really, really good gig. Apart from, the only thing I remember is like Mark hardly smiling through the whole show and the crowd going, Mark, give us a smile. Go on, Mark.
I watched the kebab video that Barnes shared today in the group. I don't know if you've seen that. That was from
Yeah.
again, it's on YouTube. Just look for Andrew Barnsley Wood and kebab, and you'll see it.
So I do have a vague recollection of there being issues either with Mark's kit or some of the teching that was being done around his keyboards and stuff at the time. Not necessarily, I don't think it was specifically that gig, but I think for a run of the gigs there was problems with his. Isn't there always problems with his kit because he uses so much tech? If it goes wrong, it's really difficult to recover, and he was really stressed about it for a couple of gigs.
Yeah.
I think it was that whole sort of then and somewhere else tour as well. We had a few keyboard issues at various points, and then it got settled on the later tours, which I guess he moved to main stage or whatever.
But also they had the back screens for this tour that I can't remember on somewhere else. Because obviously this we mentioned in the last pod, this was the first gig where Out of This World with the video by Mark Kennedy was debuted. So they had screen media as well.
Yeah, they did on this tour.
Not as good as it was. Not as good as it has been recently.
Was Out of This World played on the whole tour?
No, it was debuted.
It was debuted at Nottingham, wasn't it? Because I remember Mark being really excited that his video had been played at Nottingham. Yeah. The night after Nottingham was the Kentish Town Forum in London, which
that was a great gig.
Gig, and we've talked about on our group today was one of those Live Here Now. You could buy the CD of the gig at the venue on the night. You just
on the night, yeah.
To wait for
because this was the first tour where they did the day after downloads, wasn't it? If the sound desk recording was okay, you were able to download the gig. And I think it was within 24 hours generally of the gig happening.
I don't know.
But then because I remember I got the Leeds gig the day after because I was blown away by it. I actually bought a couple of other shows before that. I didn't. The Inverness show is not available to download.
What a surprise that is! Yeah, I've got Glasgow download, and then I've got the CD of this.
I've got that one as well. That's fantastic.
And I've got the poster advertising it.
Yeah, because that CD, I didn't do merch itself on that gig because I was down the were we like pretty much front row on that gig?
Yeah, we were
front. I think we were actually front row on that gig, but I had to then go as soon as the gig was finishing straight to the back because I was helping out distribute those CDs to the people who bought them. So I was on merch duty, but for those sold CDs on that gig.
Yeah.
There was loads sold, absolutely loads.
You could also buy them at Racket as well, for a limited time afterwards.
Oh, could you?
Mm.
Yeah, they were available afterwards.
Oh, right, okay. It's funny because there was a period where loads of bands did that, but I don't know of anybody really doing it anymore. I don't know if that's because we've hit full streaming culture and all that kind of stuff.
I've seen it somewhere recently.
There's the Encore series and things like that who do it. I think Springsteen does it through Nugs or wherever it is, and a few other bands that are under that sort of banner. Metallica. There we go.
Yeah,
John's showing. Yeah. So I think it's still a
Gabriel did something similar, didn't he?
yeah.
He's our Peter Gabriel, yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're the Pete Gabriel. They're the back to front ones.
Took my glasses off. Yeah.
So I think it's still going.
I don't think
But
this
not
is
widely.
This is still going. The music.com wrapped up years ago. They sold all the stock off. I think bands tend to do, as James says, downloads now, don't they?
Yeah.
Rather than physical CDs. I know for a good few years ago, Mark Knopfler used to do USBs. You could buy a USB of the gig.
Oh, okay.
But anyhow, they go for quite a lot of money on if you've got one to sell.
Well, the London gigs.
Yeah, they are CDRs though, obviously, because
Yeah, they are.
on the night.
And you can buy the download on Racket and Bangkok.
Get James making sure his boss is there. He's in with his boss. Yeah. Well done, mate. Keep it straight. From there, the tour went into Holland. I'm not even going to pronounce where they went the following night on the 21st of November because I can't.
Yeah, that's too many vowels and consonants together, isn't it?
I can't do that. No.
Here, Hugaward.
Bless you. And yeah, quite a few gigs in Holland. Played Tilburg.
You can say that.
I can say that.
Nijmegen.
There too,
I
yeah.
can say that one as well.
Look at you. You're well travelled, James, you. And then on the 26th of November, they played the E-Work in Cologne.
But it's odd because there was only one German date and one French date on the tour.
Yeah.
They played the second leg in beginning of 2009, then went back to some of the countries. Yeah.
Well, the German gig was recorded for TV, went out on TV, and then was the 2009 Christmas DVD for the fan club. But it also became Happiness is Cologne double CD as well, didn't it?
It did.
What were you wearing there, Nath? What did you have?
Oh, I've got the remaster numbered to 5,000 when they did the 10 live CDs that were reissued.
Yeah.
The ear version, yeah.
And I think
I must admit, I was upset when they released the CD of the album because I'd managed to get a copy of the sound CD of the desk CD. I was like, yeah, I've got a copy of the show, like brilliant. And then they just released it anyway. I was like, oh bollocks. So,
I think you can see the DVD or the film of the concert. I think it's on the space.
Yes, I think it is.
Where is it on there? Because Craig and I were talking about that earlier.
I think so.
I think it's definitely on Amazon Prime. If it's not, because it's one of those things of I think one of these music channels on Amazon Prime has got a license for it.
We're not members, James. Are you a member of the space?
I am. Let me see if I can get hold of it. Anyway, talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
Wasn't it while you're doing it? Wasn't this the tour that Mr. H had his famed jacket?
Yes.
Yes.
And slippers.
Well, it did. It was on the Cologne gig. He's barefoot.
With the painted.
With painted toenails. Yeah.
Because his jacket wasn't his. If I'm correct in this, wasn't his jacket he bought for Aziz's wedding or Dahl's wedding?
Okay, that's good knowledge.
Yes, it was.
Now you say that, now I know what jacket you're talking about.
Yeah. The long.
Isn't that when? If you listen to the Leeds gig, I don't know if it's done. So on the Leeds gig, somebody shouts, "What on earth are you wearing?" And he went, "What, this? Or what am I wearing under it?" Yeah.
No walking carpet jokes or whatever.
So the European leg of the tour ended in France, in Lille, on the 27th of November. They played the Racket Club on the 7th of December. That presumably was a web thing, was it?
It was a competition, wasn't it?
That was a competition.
Somewhere, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You can tell we didn't win that because I don't know.
Was it a pre-order competition? Was it?
Might have been.
Where
Yeah.
Everyone who pre-ordered got put into a hat for.
Yeah.
And was that same competition where someone got to win being on the album, and they played
Yes.
That was yes. It was
on older
triangle or tambourine or something.
Yeah, something like that on either
Triangle.
Me or Threw Me Out. I can't remember which one. I think.
It all sounds good. I can't remember that, but yeah, you just talk amongst yourselves. I'm looking at the
I
book.
don't know where that came from in my brain,
I
but
think you're right.
Yeah, it was because you got to play triangle. It was, yeah.
And I've got a feeling potentially they wrote an article for the web afterwards saying how hard it was to get a triangle in time and all the rest of it. So I'm sure
Tricky
somebody figured that
instrument.
out.
Good memory, because I'd forgotten about that completely until you mentioned it.
So had I.
So had I, but I just threw it out there.
Only remembered it as the words came out of my mouth.
Marillion Tourette's, I think you'll find.
Yeah.
I can't find them in the book. I'm sure they're there, but
I'm sure it should be. They should have been credited.
I'm sure they are. But there's a lot.
Just to interject, it is on the space.
Is it? Thank you.
Yes.
Well worth a view. It's a good gig.
It is.
So so the second leg of the tour started off in the 24th of January at the Rockefeller in Oslo.
Oh, yes.
But then came back to the UK for a very memorable gig at the Concorde 2 in Brighton.
We discussed the Oslo one, haven't we? The
Have we?
beginning of it. Yeah. Haven't we discussed it?
No.
What happened with Real Tears for Sale? Or Real Tears went wonky?
Discuss it again, James.
So I met this is another thing that Barnes has got on YouTube. You can find the Oslo weekend, because we went down there to see the Pineapple Thief. We're playing the John D on the. Is it the John D? There's a smaller one. On the Friday, supported by Gazpacho and Airbag, and the Murillos were there. And funnily enough, I went up to Rothers and said, "Are we going to get Real Tears for Sale tomorrow?" And he went, "Maybe." And the next day at the gig, they started off with Real Tears, but they were on borrowed equipment, and I think Ian's in-ears failed because they started the song at almost like on Prozac. It was so slow, and Pete at one point just went, "I can't play to this," threw his bass down, walked off. H sort of went, I better follow him. And one by one, they went off. And it was about 5-10 minutes gap. And then they came back on to, I think, Dreamy Street. They started off the normal set. And so I went, "Oh, sorry about that. We had to go and change our underwear." He made a real joke about it and things like that. And they played Real Tears later in the set. It was a good gig.
Yeah, I mean, the set list on Setlist FM does mention Real Tears for Sale starts, but band walks off after a minute due to technical problems. Felicity's just dug up a factual fact about what we were talking about.
Yeah, so on Wikipedia, I found it on Wikipedia. It's easier than looking on the actual album. It has got additional musicians credited. P. Bissett, additional tuned percussion. John Houghton, overworked tambourine. And Dawn Roberts, finger cymbal on Essence.
Of those, I would
Finger
guess
cymbals.
Dawn Roberts, because John Houghton's a journalist, isn't he?
Right.
Yeah,
so-
he was the one. He was the one who infamously called the space overworked guff.
Yeah.
Ah.
And P. Bissett is an alter ego of certain Liverpudlian producer.
Is it? Okay. Look at that. More knowledge. You see, you wouldn't get this anywhere else, folks.
Yeah, there's reason for that.
Nobody wants it. No one wants it. I know. I understand.
Yeah, my wife's going, "You talking bollocks again?"
That's the alternative title of this podcast. So back to Brighton, because I had a great time in Brighton.
That was the first time they played.
That was the
Concorde
first
too,
time. Yeah.
because they went back. Was it 9 months later? On Less Is More.
They did.
That's the time I was there. Yeah.
I was there too.
This night, the band were behind the bar after the gig, serving folks and dishing drinks out. It was hilarious. It was a brilliant atmosphere in the venue.
Concorde's a good venue.
It is a great venue. And there's also,
It
again,
is a great venue.
we'll mention him lots because he's not here. There's also a picture of Andrew Barnsley Wood blowing up a condom, sticking it on his head that night. So, you know.
One thing surprised me actually with like the size of the venues they played, because we talked about the Ironworks and the JBs and stuff like that, is that you fast forward what, say 2009. So you fast forward 7 years, 2 albums, or 8 out. Yeah, they're playing the Albert Hall. Who would have thought
Yeah.
on that tour that in a few years' time they'll be playing back to those size
Yeah.
venues?
I think that, I mean, we all know why they played the album, why they finally got in. They probably could have done it a few years earlier if they'd have just gone with a promoter and, you know.
But it was also they played the Palladium. They played on the Fear tour.
Yeah,
They played.
yeah.
They got back to bigger venues. But anyway, that was just a.
Yeah,
Nicer
yeah.
venues.
No, it's a great observation, James. Absolutely. But the tour continues out into France, Germany, Czechia, Poland, back to Germany, Holland, and ends in Paris on the
I went to
16th.
Prague.
Did you?
I went to the Prague gig. It was on my birthday, so
Oh, wow.
I made the trip over. to
Nice
Prague.
venue, retro music.
Yeah, a very pretty venue, and probably certainly the furthest east I've gone for a Marillion gig. So always interesting to see a different crowd in a different country.
Yeah. And they put Thunderfly back in for you by that point,
For me,
just for you.
And it was funny as well, because considering that had been a fairly decent tour through from the November into December, into January and February, and then they only had a few weeks off, and then bam, it was Port Zealand.
Yeah. Well, it was it Padua first? No, that's upcoming shows for this year. Ignore me. Of course it is. Yeah, I mean, all of that was off the back of, it was Los Trios at the start of 2008, wasn't it? So a pretty busy year all round.
I mean, if you think about it, between 2007 and 2008 and into 2009, the amount of touring and writing and recording and everything that went on, I think I mentioned it earlier on the pod, it was such a manic period for them. There's so much going on. I don't think had they ever actually been that as busy.
Well, I think you can stretch it even further back than that, because if you look at somewhere else into 2007, 6, even 2005, when they were promoting Marbles on the Road, and then you had the Marbles tour before that. So I think no wonder they were burnt out by the time they hit 2009, and what ended up with, doing less is more.
I mean, I think we touched upon this in the previous episode, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but should they release them as 2 separate albums?
Yes.
Well, that's that dealt with, Nick.
That is the definitive answer.
Yeah. So and kind of Lucy's alluded to this a couple of times, and they seem to have changed their mind. And I think at points they've regarded them as 2 separate albums, and then at points they've not, so they can't quite decide. But for me, they are 2 quite distinct entities with 2 very different feels. So yes, I think it should have been 2.
Just from the workload point of view as well, though, they could have, they'd got enough to sort of stretch it out for another year or so with that.
I think the answer's in the fact they actually called them 2 different things themselves. Although it was released as the Happiness is the Road package, it is Essence and the Hard Shoulder. It's 2 separate sets of music. For me, it works that way. I'm not going to get into whether or not they should have made it 1 album and selected different songs, but
I don't subscribe to that point of view.
I don't agree with it, and that's why I'm not going to get into it, because I know some people say that. I don't know what you've said in the first couple of episodes. So,
well, there's just coming up later in this episode. There's quite a lot of listener comments on the Facebook group, and that there's quite a strong theme of people saying that in those comments.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that, because I think they are as Nathan's just said, they are distinct collections. They have different feels to them. And I don't think putting them together would have worked.
Yeah,
taking out some of the material.
Okay.
I'll say one thing about the tour as well is it was one of those tours where there was no Fish era material at all I don't think on any of the dates. So it was purely H stuff.
They might have played a couple of Fish numbers in the warm-ups, as in the Los Trios stuff and things like that. But yeah, no, funny, I've not even thought about that. Yeah, it's true.
Any overriding thoughts then about this album? Apart from, I think we've established that we think it's overlooked, even amongst the fan base.
it's underrated, and it was a really good time to be a fan.
It would have been a
There's so
nice.
much going on.
It would be nice to see them do. I know they've done bits of it, the bits of Essence as a weekend, but actually do the whole double album.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, 100%. I mean, even if they did treat it as two separate albums, I mean, that's two nights at Portsea Land, right? If we ever go back there.
Maybe.
It's like, I mean, that's two set lists already done. You do one disc one night with some other encores and do the other one the second night.
Somewhere else. Sorry.
Justice for somewhere else as well.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a
Yeah.
plan.
I mean, Distant Lights, we'll see what we're talking about. That is a really good Blu-ray and CD, but we will discuss that further on a podcast.
Well, I was about
The
to say,
weekend down the
what
lane.
you think is the best live recorded version? I probably would agree with Craig that Distant
Lights, yeah.
is the best, but Happiness is Cologne is good.
It is good. It's interesting. I don't generally listen to live stuff very much. I tend to prefer the studio recordings. And it was occurring to me, we talked in the previous episodes about how lush and complex and how many little textures and colours of sound that there are in this album. And a lot of that then gets lost when you play it live, obviously, because they can't do all of that. And I wonder if that possibly is a little bit of an element as to why this is a less loved album.
But I found it watching Snow de Cologne today. I found like the version of Happiness on the Cologne gig. Rothers is absolutely ripping it a new one in the second half of it. He's brilliant.
Yeah, because the solos are slightly different and stuff now.
Yeah, nothing like the studio version. But also on that the pace of the gig doesn't pick up until Woke Up. So you've got Dreamy Street, This Train, Nothing Fills a Hole. It isn't till Woke Up that the crowd kind of kick in and the whole thing goes up a level.
I think, and I think we've previously mentioned it. The solo on the second solo that's live, not on the album on Woke Up, and they play it quicker.
Yeah.
And they do. I think listening, because I hadn't heard the live stuff for a long time of Happiness on the tour, and listening back to it is actually there's a rawer sound to it, because as Vic said, it's less layered. It's more obviously in the live setting. But I think on the vocals, where on some of the album it's softened, H can deliver really harsh, pointed delivery, and that for me makes it really, really good.
So as somebody who hadn't seen them live for a decade, going to see them on that tour, the two things that I noticed really were Mark. He developed although we're saying it's not as intricate as perhaps is recorded on the album, he's able to, he was able to do far more on stage than he had done previously, and there's more to it. And even if you listen to the download albums that were made available, obviously they're straight from the desk, so you hear things differently slightly than you would have done live. And there's a lot of stuff that Mark's doing. And the other thing is exactly what you say about H's delivery on the live versions on that tour. Even of the older material, there was so much emotion and passion and drive to it. It changed a lot of the dynamic of the song, particularly on those Happiness tracks. It gave some of them just that little bit more of an edge than you had necessarily on the album.
Yeah.
I have to kind of say, just to come back to the Distant Lights thing, that I did all those weekends in 2019, and I think my favorite Essence set was the Sunday in Lisbon, because it was seated, so there was nobody rushing off to the bar. So I think the way they play live now and the more seated venues would probably suit a more Essence-like set, whereas I'm not quite sure it worked at kind of those gigs which were all standing. You've kind of got that background noise going on.
I don't think it worked in Wodge. I don't think it worked in Wodge very much at all. I think the venue didn't lean itself towards that because of and that's one of the two that I do that's one of the two weekends that I do remember more than the others.
Yes.
We won't ask why that.
Well, I had to say, it was.
I had to say it because I saw Nathan smiling before I'll get in before he does.
it was that convention. I'm washing my hands after going to the loo, and this man walks up to me and goes, "You're too young to be a Marillion fan." Okay, and who are you? Hi, I'm Graham.
Never been backwards in coming forwards, Nate. So, you know.
Me, no, not at all.
I wanted to come back to what Gray was saying about H's vocal as well, and agreed on Happiness is Cologne. His voice is so strong, and I guess there's a little bit of an element of, obviously his voice has changed now, and especially listening to things like Fantastic Place, Invisible Man, and the Brave stuff as well. So The Last of You, where H doesn't go for the high, they're not necessarily high, but the powerful, he sings The Last of You lower down now. And I wonder if that was possibly the last time he belted things up there. But something I forgot to mention when we talked about Leeds was, and it was amongst many people I know, I'm kind of known that Invisible Man is not my favourite song. It's just never been a song that I've really connected with at all. But at Leeds, it hit me. Just for some reason, I was absolutely stunned by it at Leeds. And the version on Happiness Cologne is phenomenal as well.
I'm just going back to what Gray was saying about Mark with the keyboards. Interestingly, he only had one stack of keyboards on this tour as well. He just had, I think, 3 keyboards he was using. So he was, switching sounds what appears to be quite easily, but obviously we've talked about some of the tech problems earlier in the tour, so maybe not so easily. But I think it's from as a sort of overview of the 3 episodes we've got here. I think we all love the album, and we all had a great time on this tour. It's got really special memories for all of us.
It was this tour and the Somewhere Else tour that I probably did the most physical number of gigs.
Me too, I think.
I think for me, I was still quite a new fan. So like Nottingham was still only like gig number 5 or 6. So seeing them was still quite magic, still quite special. And
as opposed to what now?
No, I mean it's still special now. It's just a different kind of special.
And it was something I realised.
Save, Nate.
Something something I realised today, although I knew it was the first time I'd seen the band in 10 years, what I didn't realise until that Leeds gig was the first time I had seen any of the material from Marbles live. And honestly, so what Felicity was saying there about the Invisible Man is one of my favourite of their songs, bar none. It is just the first time I'd missed a couple of albums, came to Marbles, put it on and thought, holy shit, this is just mind-blowing. And to hear it live, and I don't know if it was because of that particular performance, we all know that Leeds gig, the band fed off the audience. It was really something special. That performance was phenomenal. And it just blew me away. And I still, to this day, think it's one of my favourite performances of The Invisible Man.
So what we're saying is, if you haven't got it, go and download it.
Yeah.
Again,
But
Jay,
even-
are you on commission?
Even
I should be.
You
I should
Ray.
be. Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Adam, if he's on a commission, surely we should be on
I
commission.
think we should be. In
To
fact,
get
we
them to do a discount code of Planet
should get a link. We should put a link that you access Marillion.com
An affiliates link where you get a cut.
I've got a voucher code.
Yeah.
Frey Gooston.
No, double the price, mate.
Anyhow, I think we've talked about this album long enough.
I think it's time to hear what other people think.
Yeah, I asked you, with Craig's help, what you thought. So it's over to me and Craig to tell you. Okay, so back in April, I asked, along with Craig on our Facebook group, I asked
Yeah, because you asked and they actually take notice of you.
Well, I'm not saying that. Don't get complex. I did tag you in it. I said our homework for the Easter weekend is Happiness is the Road, and I asked what you think of Happiness is the Road, and we got lots and lots of comments again. So thank you very much for getting involved. And I can't tell whether it's because it's a recentest album or whether it's a real favourite, but we got a lot of comments, didn't we, Craig?
Yeah, and it's very, it seems to be very Marmite for people.
Yeah, not so much as some of the other stuff recently. There's a lot of love for it, but let's read some of the highlights from the comments. Pep Canals says, as we've discussed some time, this is a well-regarded album for me. Too underrated. Essence is a sonic journey, more about musical pieces rather than songs. And The Hard Shoulder is a very good collection of songs. Good sound, well produced, one that deserves the Atmos treatment. Eh, Lucy Jordache?
Yeah, hint, hint, hint.
I'm all for that, Pep. You keep ploughing that furrow. Go for it.
Steve Matthews, a short one here. They would have made a stunning single album. That's all.
Ooh, controversial. Hamish Mackenzie says, on the whole, a good experiment. Volume 1 is good conceptually, and there are peaks and valleys. Volume 2 is a fine odds and sods collection, but has some of the band's least memorable songs. Oh dear. Similar sort of theme to what you've just read out. There's probably an amazing album between both of these discs. A mix between a slimmed down Volume 1 with Planet Marzipan, Asylum Satellite, Older Than Me, Harry my dog in the background, Real Tears for Sale, and one more to fill out the rest of the disc. Harry, do you not agree with that? I don't think Harry agrees, Craig.
Does he not? Oh,
No.
Pepper's just buggered off there, so I can't ask her. Stuart Chandler, cool. I really like this stroke these albums. Some great tunes and properly heartfelt stuff. I wouldn't hate another release like this at all.
Cool. Andy Bliss, you going to say it?
He's a friend of ours. And the pod.
Oh, okay. Andy says, not an album I play very often these days. I really like Essence at the time, but it doesn't really excite me much these days. The Hard Shoulder has some decent songs on it, but as an album, it feels a little disjointed. Good memories of this one when it came out, though, in the glory days of the West Country Pumpkins. Dreamy Street brings back happy memories of a sunny day in Bristol before one of their gigs on the Happiness is the Road tour.
Yeah. Egbert Derricks. Now, if anybody's got any sense, have a listen to our episode with Egbert a few weeks ago. It's an absolute corker. But Egbert says, I love this album and the spirit of Eckhart Tolle's writing that's in there. This Train Is My Life is one of my favourite Marillion songs, and H's lyrics inspired me to write a string quartet, and H was so kind to recite the great lyric for me on his Marillion album. Yes, check it out. It's on Spotify, guys. It's great.
What's it called?
Songs in a lilac key.
Paintings.
Paintings in a lilac key, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, go listen to the episode. Mikey K says, I love...
Are you not going to say friend of the pod?
Well, friend of the pod, Mikey K says, I love the cover artwork, and then a little shrug emoji. That's all he says.
Oh dear. Bless him. Carl Rag Regan. I could write an essay about Happiness is the Road. With the exception of a couple of singles, Kaylee and Cover My Eyes, this was my first proper delve into Marillion. I'd got tickets to see the band in Nottingham based entirely on liking Kaylee and Cover My Eyes. They then announced the album, so I thought I'd better download it and see what it's all about, since I've been seeing a fair chunk of it live. Wow, Essence blew me away. I'd never heard music like it before. Bear in mind, I was about 18 or 19-year-old at the time. I thought Volume 1 was one of the most gorgeous pieces of music from start to finish, and the song Essence was the real highlight for me. The climax build up towards the end of that song just struck a chord I didn't even know could be struck. I was hooked. Seeing the band live only cemented my love for them, and it was on that tour that I discovered gems like Afraid of Sunlight, The Great Escape, Mad, Neverland, etc. Happiness is the Road album and the gig on that tour in Nottingham are the main reasons I went away and got the rest of the back catalogue for the band and positioned them #1 in my favourite bands of all time list, above Dream Theater, who were previously held in the top spot. I really don't understand the dislike for this album, especially Volume 1. Even I'll admit there's a couple of throwaway tunes on Volume 2, but Volume 1 Essence from start to finish with some headphones on is just an absolute bliss. I could go on further, but you get the idea. I love this album. I'm possibly the only person out there to say it, but I'm putting it at #1 on my top Marillion albums list. Seriously.
Wow.
That's a
Great
corker,
stuff,
isn't
Carl.
it?
That's
Yeah,
brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks for that, Carl. It's great that you love the album so much, and thanks for taking the time out to tell us all that. That's brilliant. Paul McMillan says, Essence is a beautifully produced, dare I say it, almost too well album. The running order is fantastic and the songs are great, but I think it was always meant to be a flowing collection of songs rather than individual tracks. It's overlooked, in my opinion, given its more keyboard focus, but it's well crafted and hangs together with some gorgeous tones and textures throughout. The Hard Shoulder, I love. The Man from Planet Marzipan, Asylum Satellite 1, Older Than Me, Throw Me Out, and Whatever Is Wrong With You. But the rest does nothing for me. And when I first heard Real Tears for Sale, I felt it was going through the motions rather than being dynamic. Not the best and not the worst. Wow.
Seamus Colgan. God, you're going to say friend of the pod.
Craig's friend of the pod.
Tis a very underrated album for some reason. Volume 2, my favourite, seems to be particularly disliked. Not by us, it's not.
No.
A couple of years ago, during my rediscovery of the band, I bought both volumes on vinyl without streaming them first. You know what? Listening to them for the first time was one of my best Marillion experiences during my getting to know you phase. Both albums are bursting to the gills with experiments in loads of new musical directions, making it quite unique project for the band. Actually, the surprise playing If She's Older Than Me was my personal highlight of the last weekend gigs in Berlin.
Yay!
Back to the vinyl for a wee second. Great sounding pressings on both double LPs. Sets look great. Well done, lads. I'd love another similar musical melange, please.
Definitely. Rich Harding, singer of Glass Satellites, Marillion tribute band, says, I've always felt that Essence was overrated. Oh, wow, they've done another concept album, and that The Hard Shoulder was undervalued by a lot of people for that reason. There was a perception in fan groups online that The Hard Shoulder was some kind of bonus album for pre-orders, and in the end it would have been better if the perception of both albums, if they'd been released separately. But hey, a lot of very noisy fans had been totally over the top in their denigration of Somewhere Else, which is very much the last Marillion album that could have been made by any band other than Marillion, which to my mind is a good thing. So we ended up with a Marbles-like package. I'm now looking forward to Lucy coming along and telling me I'm talking bollocks. If she does, we'll let you know.
Gary Page.
Hey, friend of the pod.
A good friend of us.
Yeah, he's been on the pod, yeah.
Yeah, I will love Gary. Need to go back and listen as it's been a while since I've listened to both in full. I'm not one for doing hundreds of gigs per tour, but I think I saw them loads for me for some reason on this tour.
Andrew Barnsley Wood. Hang on, we've heard from him. Now we're talking. I love these albums. Love them. To me, they're like Brave, only good. Wow. Send your emails to Andrew Barnsley Wood at Planet Marzipan.
Bless. And let's have a look. Mixstead, love the Essence album. Real Tears for Sale, a great song from The Hard Shoulder.
Kieran Buxton says, Essence has been my favourite of these two albums since it first came out because it was much easier to listen to, and I'm sure they played more of the tracks live. This Train Is My Life and Happiness Is the Road are both beautiful tracks. Listening again, though I know there are some real gems I have overlooked. The Hard Shoulder I don't think got more than one play, and after listening to side 1 and side 2 I could still see why, but side 3 is lovely. I'm having to work out what his acronyms are here. Threw Me Out, Half the World. What's the other one? Can't remember.
Whatever's wrong with you, is it?
No, OLM. OLM. What's? Anyway, I've been played properly at home. They just took on a new level tonight that I've never really noticed before. Real Tears for Sale I already liked again. The thought of getting a good airing at a good volume, so I took it to a different level. I know the running order is different on the vinyl, so I'm glad I got them out and gave them another chance. I feel like I've discovered a new Marillion album. Well, you can tell that as you've already heard from me, I agree with you. I think the vinyl's a better running order. And just finally, Caroline Smithson says, as mentioned above, it was the first album we saw live with the new singer. We'd been going through a tumultuous period as a family, and this album is really calming, I found. More recently, I've listened to it again and found it had the same effect. Not my favourite album, but it's like a friend you can turn to when things get a bit much. Fantastic. Well, as we've said, thanks for all your comments. There's lots more in the Facebook group.
Loads of them.
Have a read through. And if you're not a member of the Facebook group, please join in and join the discussion. We've got people are putting ideas for episodes on there. They're putting their comments on about episodes. And we're on 1,200 people in the group now. So thanks to everybody that's joined and that reads and that contributes. And if you're not there, come and join us. Anyhow, it's back to Craig and I. Yeah, back to him and me. Okay, so that was a roundup of what you thought online. But all that remains is to thank our gang for tonight. Thank you, Felicity.
Adios.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Ciao.
Thank you, Gray.
Pleasure as always.
And thank you, Craig.
Well, thank you very much.
It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Take care.
And check out Planet Music.
Oh, coming soon.
Thanks for listening to Planet Marzipan Podcast. Please like and subscribe from whichever platform you get your podcasts from. You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com and check out marillion.com, fishmusic.scot for all the good stuff.